My wife hid multiple affairs throughout our 27-year marriage. Now, she's lost her job, her reputation, and the family she betrayed. I'm a 56-year-old man who'd built nearly 3 decades of memories with her, through good times and bad, and we had 2 grown daughters who had flown the nest to other states. Our life together seemed steady, but I'd never expected that a single message would shake it all. Weeks ago, I got a Facebook message from someone named Pedro, a random friend request, and then, "I don't want to alarm you, but I have something important to discuss." Alarming, sure, but I brushed it off as spam. Little did I know that this was the start of everything unraveling. Then another message came, "It's about your wife." That one jolted me. I called my wife, almost ready to confront her, but something stopped me. After all these years, trust should have been easy, but doubt had slithered in. So I replied to Pedro, asking who he was. He claimed he was an old friend of my wife's and needed to get something off his chest, preferably in person. Skepticism mixed with dread. I agreed to meet him in a public square, suspicious but too curious to ignore it. I even carried a weapon, just in case. Pedro showed up, younger looking than my wife, but clearly nervous. His words were like a punch in the gut. For 3 years, he'd had an affair with my wife, back when she was his boss. I almost didn't believe him, but he seemed genuine. Even so, he had no proof. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe he was lying, but doubt gnawed at me. I thanked him and went home, not telling my wife a word, but I couldn't shake the unease. That night, I did something I'd never imagined. I searched my wife's phone and laptop while she slept. I found nothing until I checked Slack. There, flirtatious and explicit messages with 2 coworkers, confirming she had betrayed me. I felt like a fool, but there it was, undeniable proof. My wife was not who I thought she was. For days, I couldn't face her without feeling the crushing weight of her betrayal. The disbelief hurt as much as the realization. 27 years of marriage, shattered by flirtatious messages and secrets buried in her work chats. I felt nauseated, anger boiling and sadness clawing at my chest. How could she do this? I kept replaying our history, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. But there was no obvious moment, just a slow erosion that had stayed hidden until now. I stayed silent, observing her, looking for signs of guilt. But she was calm, going about her routine, smiling and laughing as if nothing had changed. That made it worse. Was she really this good at pretending? Or was I that blind? Even the memories we'd built together felt tainted. A part of me wanted to yell at her, to confront her right away. Another part of me wanted to curl up in bed and pretend it wasn't happening. I felt paralyzed, caught between the need to protect myself and the instinct to lash out. Eventually, I snapped. I'd spent too many sleepless nights, the betrayal replaying in my mind. I hired the best divorce lawyer I could find, quietly preparing for the fallout. The lawyer assured me we had a solid case, and that I had to stay strong. As we drafted the divorce papers, I felt the first flicker of resolve. My mind became clearer. I had to take back control. I'd already lost too much. My plan unfolded slowly. First, I arranged a video call with her family, her father, her closest relatives. She wasn't aware of what was coming. I chose a time when she would be on her work break, told her it was a surprise. When the call began, I started with names: Pedro Gonzalez, Tim Scalin, John Walker Babb. Do those names ring a bell? Her shock was palpable. Her face went pale, and she stammered, struggling to find words. The truth hit her like a slap. She couldn't hide or deny it. "How could you humiliate me like this?" she gasped, her voice cracking, before she slammed her laptop shut. Her relatives looked at me, stunned, confused. So, I laid everything bare. I detailed her affairs, the evidence I'd collected, my sleepless nights, her father's. Heart broke before my eyes. Her brother seethed with anger. No one defended her. After the call, I served her the divorce papers the moment she came home. "You'll need to find another place to stay," I told her coldly. Her tears didn't move me. She tried to explain, tried to cling to whatever shred of sympathy she thought I had left, but I was done. The betrayal was too deep. She packed her things, and with that, our life together ended. But it wasn't over. The part that scared me most was our daughters. How would they react? Would they hate me? I'd been their rock, their protector. Now, I was the father dismantling their image of home. Yet, I had to stand firm. I knew they'd find out, but I hoped they'd understand. I didn't want them caught in the middle, but there was no easy way to shield them from the truth. The days that followed were a storm of chaos and heartbreak. My wife had left the house, only returning once when I wasn't home, to gather more of her belongings. We barely spoke. The silence was heavy, but it felt better than hearing her try to excuse herself. Despite everything, I couldn't stop thinking about our daughters. I kept praying that I hadn't ruined things for them, too. Then came the news that sent everything spiraling. My daughters had found out. Their uncle, always quick to defend me, had told them everything, far more than I ever wanted them to know. I wasn't ready for their reactions, the look of betrayal and confusion in their eyes. Sophie and Cassandra, my beautiful, smart girls. They were adults now, but I still felt a need to protect them from pain. But there was no protecting them from this. The illusion of our happy family was shattered, and I was the one holding the hammer, even if I hadn't been the one to crack it first. When Cassandra called me, I braced myself for anger, for blame. But instead, there was just hurt. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice tight, almost breaking. I didn't have an easy answer. I didn't want to make you hate your mother, I admitted. Silence hung between us, a void I couldn't fill. Finally, she whispered, "I don't hate you, Dad. I just don't understand any of this." It broke me. Then, out of the blue, came something I didn't expect. My younger daughter, Cassandra, my wife's favorite, began to pull away from her mother. Their relationship, once unbreakable, started to fracture. I heard from mutual friends and relatives that they'd had a massive falling out, words exchanged that neither of them could take back. The betrayal had rippled beyond our marriage and into every part of our lives. My wife's actions had cost her more than her marriage. They had cost her the respect of her own children. In the midst of this mess, my lawyer called me with some news. The divorce negotiations had taken a turn. My wife, who had initially wanted to fight tooth and nail for our shared assets, suddenly backed off. The house, the place where we'd raised our daughters, where I'd planned to grow old, would be mine. There would be no need for alimony. I couldn't understand her sudden surrender until I pieced it together. She had lost too much already, and maybe she knew fighting was pointless. She had no more loyalty left to fight for, not even from her daughters. But even as the divorce was finalized, a final act remained. I wasn't satisfied with just separating our lives. I had one last thread of revenge to pull, one that would make sure her professional life suffered as much as mine had. The final step in my plan was simple but effective. I had waited, biding my time, until the divorce was settled and the dust had begun to clear. My wife, a high-level executive at a prestigious finance company, had broken a crucial company policy. Her affairs weren't just personal betrayals. They were professional violations, too. All three of her affair partners had been subordinates, creating an undeniable power imbalance. Her company had strict rules about this, and she had flagrantly broken them. Pedro, the repentant ex-lover who'd first reached out to me, was crucial in what happened next. I messaged him, reminding him of his guilt, of the impact his actions had on my life. I urged him to do the right thing, not just for me, but to stop her from potentially harming others at work. I suggested that if he truly wanted to atone, he should confess to the company about their past relationship. I didn't expect him to agree, but he did. Maybe guilt had finally consumed him, or maybe he still had a shred of decency. Either way, he drafted a report. I reviewed his email before he sent it. It wasn't just a confession. It named names and detailed the inappropriate behavior, including how pressured he had felt at the start. I made some suggestions to ensure the email would strike the right chord. When he finally hit send, the ripple effects were immediate. The company launched an investigation, suspending my wife while they sorted everything out. The investigation was thorough, and I slipped in additional details anonymously. I named the other two affair partners, ensuring they were interviewed. By the end of it, the company had more than enough evidence to fire her. She lost her job, her reputation, and the career she had spent decades building. And I watched from the sidelines, not feeling victorious, but at least feeling vindicated. My revenge had been executed with precision. But what surprised me most was how empty I felt afterward. The satisfaction I thought I'd feel was fleeting, replaced by a hollow ache. Yes, she had faced the consequences, but I was still left with a broken family, a shattered sense of trust. My daughters remained caught in the middle, and the emotional damage couldn't be undone. Pedro had done his part, but even he looked at me with a sort of pity when it was all over. In the end, I knew that my life would never be the same, but at least I'd fought back. I had stood up for myself, refused to be the man who just accepted betrayal. Now, I had to learn to move forward, scarred, yes, but hopefully stronger. Healing wouldn't be quick, but for the first time, I felt a faint hope that it was possible. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them, so please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories like this one.